Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joel Despain, the Public Information Officer for the Madison Police Department, a job that Chief Wray gave me, I think, almost 6.5 years ago, and I've enjoyed working with him every day since then. As many of you now know, the Chief is here to announce his retirement. He wanted to make sure that the men and the women of the Police Department knew about this first, and so at our afternoon briefing at 1:45, he did tell the men and women of the Madison Police Department of his intentions to retire. He's brought a number of people with him today who are important to him, his family members and other community people who have stood behind him and worked with him over the years. And the Chief is going to answer some questions this afternoon from reporters, but more than answer questions today, he would like to schedule time with all reporters who would like to interview him so that he can do that in coming days, and he's going to cut out time to do that. So without further ado, here's Chief Wray.
Thank you. Wow. Let me start off by introducing the people that are standing behind me. There are a number of people that are standing behind me that I want to point out. They're either family members, community partners, or people that I have used off and on during my professional career for counsel and guidance. And so I'll start off with Professor Mike Scott. And most people know Professor Scott, but when there were times when trying to get a national perspective or insights into what was going on to the profession, he's always made himself available to me, and I really appreciate that, along with Herman Goldstein. Standing next to Professor Scott is also someone that has been in and out of my career for some time. When I was Chief Cooper's executive assistant, he came back and was returned as mayor, and I had not only direct access to Chief Cooper, but also had direct access to Mayor Paul Soglin, and I've always appreciated his willingness to provide, again, some counsel and advice. But the key people here, and I'll talk a bit about more why they're the key people for me here, are my wife and my two sons, Michelle Wray, immediately behind me, my oldest son, Brent Wray, and my youngest son, Elliot Wray. And I'll talk more as to how that impacts this decision here. I also have two partners that, from a policing standpoint, from a public safety standpoint, that just could not do it alone. Leslie, not only have I worked with Leslie Howard as a part of the United Way and that United Way movement, which has been so important to me, but she has always made herself available in either going to her office or my office, and just from a chief executive standpoint, again, providing counsel and guidance. And then Michael Johnson, who is a one-person dynamo. He has just been unbelievable since he's been here. I serve on the board there, but he has also always been available for guidance and counsel. So I have these people up here because they have been key people in my life in providing me counsel. I also developed a new relationship with Fire Chief, who started over 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years now. And again, we have that nice partnership. I would like to recognize Alder Schmidt, who just walked in, president of the council, and Alder Vidashilov, who was not only a part of the council, but was one of the police and fire commissioners when I was appointed chief of police in the city of Madison. This today is one of my happiest days because I think this is a celebration of next steps, but it's also one of the more difficult days. I did not arrive at this decision without a great deal of thought going into it. I love this city. I love this department. I am a lucky man to have had the honor and the privilege, with full devotion, to lead the men and women of the best law enforcement organization in the United States. I step forward to say that with as much conviction as I could ever muster. I spent time just about 1.5 hours ago talking to the men and women of this department, and it was difficult for me to stand in front and realize how much we have accomplished together over the 9 years. But it has been truly impressive. All you have to do is look around this room, and you can see what is a world-class regional training facility that we collectively came together and built, that we're using as this region to move forward law enforcement. But let me get down to how I am standing here in front of you and why today. A year ago, around this time, my wife Michelle retired after 32 years with Social Security. Our discussions were that we had planned to both retire. Well, she retired, but both be retired together at the beginning of this year of 2013. But clearly, based upon what was going on locally with the officer-involved shooting and those issues associated with, the time was not right. So I promised that I would continue to get this set of circumstances in a manageable position. I believe that the resignation at the Police and Fire Commission put that situation in a manageable position, as well as some of those subsequent investigations are now complete. So the last few weeks, the question was posed to me by my wife and family, okay, so you promised that you would deal with that, so what now are you waiting on? And I said, well, there's one more thing that I'd like to do. I'd like to, see the organization do this. And she says, no, you will never, ever find a good time to retire. And she's right. I grew up in this organization. I took the job at age 23. In a couple of months, I'll be 53. I have been at every major crisis in this department since 1989 until now. I have promoted the majority of promoted positions within this department. We have grown the department at a tremendous and even at a record-setting authorized position. So I am proud of our accomplishments. So with that, it is time. Because I don't think I could ever, with how much of my blood, sweat, and tears have gone into this department, this city, walking the streets, leading this organization, I don't think it would ever be an easy decision to do that. I have been fortunate in this community. I've had tremendous support with mayors. I've had tremendous support with council members and community members. As I was mentioning to officers earlier, growing up in the inner city of Milwaukee with 10 other brothers and sisters, I never thought that I would be this honored to be head of this organization. So let me talk about next steps. I plan to retire by the end of this year. I have enough vacation that I have to start taking. So what that means in reality is that my last days at work will probably be toward the end of September, beginning of October. I intend during that time period to continue to work internally, because this has been a tough year for the Madison Police Department, but the men and women have endured. But I intend to do everything we can to continue to move the department in the right direction. I intend to make myself available to the media. And I intend to focus on some of those things, some of those key things that have taken place over the last 9 years that make this, again, a world-class department. Just a couple of quick highlights in those 9 years. One of the things that, again, got me looking in this direction, we dealt with Halloween. It's Freak Fest, that's not an issue. When I came in, we're dealing with riots. This past year, with the mayor and the community's help, we've got Mifflin in a manageable position. We started the community policing teams. When I started as chief of police, there was no Madison Mounted, Madison K-9, cyber safety team. There was no capital K9, none of those things existed. From a problem-solving standpoint, one of my commitments was to institutionalize problem-solving. We've got our records management system, but more importantly, we were the first ones to hire problem analysts. We started and implemented from the basic teachings of Herman Goldstein, the focused deterrence with a special investigative unit. We've got a crime prevention gang unit that operates in a way that prevents crime from young people than suppression only. From a human resource standpoint, I had officers that are doing training and judgment under the radar and bias training. And then as you sit in this room, we as a management team just 5 years ago said our greatest resources are the men and women of the organization. So at a time when the economy was at its worst, the mayor and the council invested in us. And so that's why we're so proud of this training center that we have out in front of you. So I will leave it at that and open it up for a few brief questions, because I really would like I think this topic is more conducive to a more detailed discussion. So, any questions?
Chief, you said that the shooting involving Officer Heinz's was a reason why you chose to stay at the end of last year. How did that factor, or did it factor into your decision to leave at this time? Was that an impetus for leaving the department? Did you feel that, in any way, given some of the criticisms that have been lodged, that it would be in the department's best interest, or you just felt, that you should walk away?
As you're probably aware, because I think you and I have had this conversation, when I became chief, I said every 5 years I would evaluate. And I would ask myself, am I the right person for the job? Are we moving in the right direction? And so we're reaching that 5-year evaluation. That was one factor in that. But I wanted to make sure that the officer-involved shooting investigation that was complete, and what was taking place with Officer Heinz, as well as some associated investigations, were at a manageable point for me to retire. I had intended to retire at the beginning of 2013. And I just believe right now I'm at a point where I can do that.
Chief, you're a youthful retiree at 52. Do you have plans to consult or perhaps consider other positions down the road?
Yes, I do. I'm currently a member of a team that just started. It's a nationally recognized consulting team. It's called Blue Courage. And it's just now getting up and started. It's affiliated with Stephen Covey. I plan on doing consulting work, in particular for the next, say, 4 to 6 months, which would give me an opportunity to decide what I wanted to do more long term. But yes, that's what I plan on doing.
Chief, do you want to talk about transition at all?
Oh yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Transition. As I mentioned, September, the end of September, beginning of October would be my last days. And so, again, I hope to really be able to connect both internally and externally during that time. By ordinance, I believe, and I think by Police and Fire Commission policy, I'm not 100% sure, but the highest ranking law enforcement official within the department becomes the acting chief. And that would be Assistant Chief Gaber. We have already been talking about transition, what that would look like, what are the key issues, what do we do in the interim while the Police and Fire Commission is in the process of making that selection. And so those are the next steps that it would be Assistant Chief Gaber that would take on. If there are any associated promotions to fill gaps, that's where the focus and discussion would take place.
One other quick question. A few weeks ago, I know there were some concerns about communication between leadership and some of the officers, and I'm just wondering, and I know that's something that's going to be a long process, but what are some of the things that you'd like, advice maybe you'd like to pass along to people who are going to address those problems in the future?
Sure. The process for doing that is already going on. We think it's better right now at this particular time that we don't discuss a lot of what's going on with that process internally. We've agreed with that. I think, in terms of going forward, I think we need to put this in the context of this department has not seen anything like what it has seen in terms of a number of events in any history that I can recall. And I'm telling you, I have been through all of them and since like 1990. I think there's been an accumulative toll. You have the officer-involved shooting. You have a number of investigations that take place. This creates stress on officers. We had a sergeant that was a very beloved sergeant that passed away during that time period. We had something that we have not had in my recent history, is that we had an officer-involved shooting 6 months after the last one. We averaged just 2 officer-involved shootings every 2 years. One officer-involved shooting every 2 years. We had 2 in 6 months. And just to make sure that I can highlight to you the importance of use of force and impact on the community, but the officer-involved shooting and the emotional toll that it takes on the department. There is no time or incident, not only with this police department, but with any other department, where the moment of truth and choice impacts an officer more. During an officer-involved shooting, what an officer is looking for, what they're really looking for is that at this moment of truth, who is going to support me? At a time that I had to do something that I joined this career not to do. So how am I going to be supported? Now, if you just take the officer that's directly involved in that, that's one thing. But every other officer is looking at that and going, at the moment of truth and choice, where will my supervisor be? Where will my captain be? Where will my chief be? Where will the community be? At a moment that I need them most. And so that creates a great deal of stress within an organization. And so some of this should have been anticipated, but I did not think these events would happen back to back like that. I had no way to predict that. But I think we're poised to deal with them.
Chief, as you transition out, what is the state of morale in the department?
I think the state of morale is good because I believe people see the department getting past a number of not only high-profile incidents, but a sense of light at the end of the tunnel. Some of these things taking place in succession has an accumulative toll, but I think people are starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. There was a time back in the spring that I would go into my office and there would be officers or be a command staff, and back in the early spring, people would, what next? But I think people are starting to see light at the end of the tunnel.
How about the relationship between the department and the community as it stands now? Because I think you've even admitted taking a hit over the past 9 months.
I think the relationship between the department and the community is strong. You don't invest the amount of time, energy, and effort that the men and women of this organization have invested in this community, time in and time out, every call, every contact, and not at some point in time when there is a crisis, be able to weather that crisis. I believe we've weathered that crisis. But I am sensitive to the fact that there are communities within communities. And every community has a sense of where they exist on the trust continuum with their department. And so I can't just look at the entire community and say, well, I don't have people that are angry or frustrated, but I have a smaller community that is, and ignore that. I have to deal with that. And that's why we call it, making sure that we're dealing with the trust gap that exists within a number of communities. That is something that we're going to work on. That is something that we're committed to working on. But I think the larger community, the connection is there.
Right, thanks, everyone. The chief is going to make himself available in coming days to talk with media members, so just please let me know when you'd like to do that. And thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Can we go now?